Lazo Sangma la Tajidele Shuguye.
Welcome everyone. Tashidelek.
Changju Judo Samjimbe Kulunge Saldam December Shu.
Please engender the most excellent pure motivation, that of the mind of awakening bodhicitta, and in that spirit please listen to the teachings.
Da Tanangazo Keje Shia de Domba Tabgela Tuji Chimbo na Demba Ka-Nying je Ju Ji Pongbo Jiri Shidong Song Nambare la Tine Tamji Sulan Du Yong Du Ni Duje Tamji ne Meda Bao Saje Tamji ne Dungal Bao Chö Tamji Tongji Da Meba Nyangele Deba ni Shiewa Wo Songbi Ani Chöjin Domji Sina Mido Tawa Kada Ki Chaja Shi Nang La Dune Song Nang Yobare la Tele Tandanga Zo Chö Tamji Tongji Tang Mebi Kor la Ani Keje Sheshin Bayin Bare.
The topic of today's teachings is that of the four Dharma seals. The Buddha has taught many various types of teachings, known as the 84,000 different sets of teachings. But all of those 84,000 sets of teachings can be condensed in the four lines that the Buddha has famously spoken. That is, that all conditioned phenomena are impermanent, all defiled emotions are suffering, all phenomena are empty and devoid of self, and nirvana is a great peace among. So these are known as the four seals of Dharma, or the four teachings or seals signifying the teachings of the Buddha. That's also another name. Among those four, we have been concerned with the third line, that is that all phenomena are empty and devoid of self.
Da Tongji Tang Meba Tela Yang Ani Chera Do Mawa Nang Do Deba Che Ani Semza Ba Che Uma Ba Sozo Sozo Njishi Jabda Ani Chungse Chungse Mindawa Yung Yure Tele Da Khazang Ngazo Keje De Uma Be Njishi Jabda Shirsha Jine Shuba Yin.
Now, the Buddha has stated that all phenomena are emptiness and devoid of truly existing self, and then the followers, the Buddhist followers of the Buddha, commented in a slightly different way on this third line. So therefore we have actually the four philosophical schools then and themselves commented on this statement, that is Vaibhashikas or particularists, Sautantrikas, followers of the sutras, Chittamatrians or mind-only school, and Madhyamikas or the middle way school. So they all then gave their own commentaries on this line, and we have been discussing the teachings that were expounded by the proponents of the middle way school or the Madhyamikas.
Ni Uma Be Tongye Den La Pab Yung Du Rigbe Den La Pab Da Jeda Menga Ni Den La Pab Da Ni Yoba Le Tanda Ngazo Rigbe Den La Pab Da Di Kola Keje Sheshin Ba Yin Zang Ni Rigba De Nega Tsulan Du Suna Rigbe Namda Nga Nala Du Yoba Ni Nga Nane Rigbe Namda Ni Gyula Joba Toje Seme Denze Da Dreule Joba Yume Kingu Di Rigba Namba Ni Bodi Shui Sabare Tata Nangazo Gyunde Nikala Choba Mushi Kengo Jiri Ba Sekande Ni Shugi.
In the way the Madhyamikas comment or establish resolve emptiness is done in two ways, two approaches, by using analytical logical arguments or reasonings, or by following the pith instructions of a master guru. Among these two approaches, we are looking at the first one, that the reasonings, and there are many different reasonings, among which really we are concerned with the five logical arguments of the middle way. Among those, we have finished discussion of the first two, the investigation of the cause, the diamond splinters argument, the investigation of the result, refuting existent or non-existent results. And we are moving to the third reasoning. This is the reasons for the production or cessation of the four limits, also known as the four-cornered refutation of origination.
더 릭바디 규칙이 저 직직부 제거다 규칙이 저 도마 제거래 양나 규 도마에 저 도마 코나 제거다 규 도마에 저 직코나 제거래 어디내지는 잡아당 거요래 다디 최든조 산나면도 규난 저든조 랑신 만주바체 밀람나 규마다고 오는 항샤기나 아니 르버데 땅 고야요 말에 아니 규랑신게 템바르바요 바지 도양 뭐 니좀 줘봐요 바지 덴데지 섬조 송대 바지 아니 규딘조 젠조 제거요 바양 켈렌 제거요 바지 단 데도라 아니 규치 코나 임바지근 도치 코나 제거래 제 말에 아니 제바이나 또 딩해바가요 말와 나도 쌤 로지라 섬노다나 깨징음 치르바 제나 엔 깨지지기 니바죠 숨바서 양파나 규직은 르 직접받는데 요래라 양쌤 코랑 율숭 용두 아니 쌤지게라 규망부 좀 마양 요래 규직이 가서 그래다 규직은 더 망보게 봐야 용초고 그래다 쌤 거란라 섬노다나 쌤 넘버 잡아 깨지 당보 될라 때네 깨지 니바 좀 받을라네 쌤제 쌤냠도 아니 거라 아니 송망가 된서 그러와 미바 율 송바 넘버 정당 송바 뒤다다 송바 어텐데 네 데네지빈 정당 리메도 망보지 냠도 양종도 요래 양배 현신의 시에서나 규 나도 내도지기 사변 도도직을 살았다고 용도 당와이나 능고 양저우도 망보게 용도 와 규직은 저 망보게 받는데 양 항도고 요래 규직은 저우지 코나를람나 대항해 봐면도 아니 규 지기 저 도마 코나를람나 대항 내봐요 말 규직은 저 직지부 제견야 나야 요래 지도 규직은 저 도마 난게 서간도다 아니 타직도 규직은 저 직코나 인서가 니자 는 내봐가 매버려서
So the third reasoning here, analyzing this production and cessation from the four limits, is the refutation of production from four alternatives. So what are the four possible ways the production can take place, according to opponents? Where a single cause produces a single result, or where a single cause produces several results. Right, second possible way. The third way is where several causes produce a single result, and the fourth one is where several causes produce several results. Right? Well, we have but these four possible ways of production, and if we analyze them, and again, if we hold the causes and origination, the production and results to be not truly existent, to be like a dream, like an illusion, we don't need to analyze these four ways because, well, everything, can arise in those different manners, right? As a dream, as an illusion. But when we, in our mind, grasp the cause to be truly existent and real, and then we think it's truly, really produces a truly existent result, well, then we need to question. So is that single cause that produces a single truly existent result, or is it several causes, and so on, right? Actually, if we analyze in this way and look at a single cause and whether or not this can produce single result, we can't really test to that because we see that it's not the case because single cause we cannot be said that a single cause only produces its own single result, right? Because when we look at the consciousness, like a visual consciousness apprehending an object, so one cause, which is the moment of that visual consciousness, produces a next moment, and the next produces the next. So actually, it's from single cause there are multiple, several results that take place when we think about, for example, mental continuity, like as a visual consciousness, and Khenpo dila di dugi tsungpegi korlachik yankerchik sunranan.
규칙이 저 도마르당 규칙이 저칙직 부코나래 들어와라
Di chikpogi kapsu Khenpogi tsungdenchik da chik du da di korla.
두 다다와 총바 아니 넘버 송당 총바 아니 미바 율 총바 두 다다와 총바 아니 와다치드 넘버 젠당 두 다다와 율 미바 율직 총바래 율
Dis Yul. Di tsungden di kapsu di chik japures.
치 코나 제게를 남나 덴덴 면도가 셰바치기 아니 저 도마제 바양 한게래 타지도 찍찍보래 남나 되게 말해 타지도 도마 코나를 남나 양 찍게 바양 동야요래
Di rikpatsovo ina di tsundengi korla na tets da jengimendu. So right, if it were the case that a single cause only produces its own single result, then the single cause, such as this, for example, right, visual consciousness, could only produce the result of its own resemblance, like subsequent resemblance, exactly same, right? Because it would be one singular result coming from singular cause, and it could never perform the function of producing anything else, right? But that's not the case, because visual consciousness apprehends an object. It's also focuses on an object. There's a resemblance in terms of time, appearance, focus, object. Khenpo, I asked him to clarify this, but he said basically what we need to understand is the main logic here. That's what suffices, is that it's not the case that one singular cause always produces singular result, because we also observe where singular causes produce several results, right? Remember, we're talking about true existence. It would mean that it would be only the case, but it's not. We also find where one seed produces multiple instances of like results. One cause produces many results, right? But then we question, well, then is that the case that a truly existent single, like a single cause produces a truly existent several results? This is also not the case, because we observe where a single cause can produce a single result. So basically, because we can test for other instances, that means that, true existence means that it would be only this possible way, but we observe that there are all those different ways, and therefore these truly existent options fall apart.
다가 나전전에 규도마이 저 도마코나 제거다 규도마이 저 찍코나 제거래 어든에 삼로나나야 아니 덴덴 게메 바래 규 망보시기 저 찍코나 제거를람나 규 망보 좀발데네 저 도마 망보 제바야 가조 망보 더 시작함들 망보 도와야 바래 베나 데네사 루 트레셜라서 바 규망보 좀발라 데네 레오 아니 메도나 덴르 아니 찍게바 요래라 아니 데네 망볼라 데네 양 메도자 마자 로마당 레오나 동보 망보 세소나 양 도마케 받는 양 항주고 요래 아니 규도면 레오 타지도 찍코나래 시소나 되는 가면도 와라 아니 타지도 망보 코나래 남나 한 된데 가면 바래 뭐나 가야 낭 저거 말해 벨람나 되네 루좀 지송인데 가야 저거래 낭 가야 낭 저바디 아니 규진 텐들 좀바 삼지 랑신 마주바 삼지 네바 메바 삼지 아니 신규래 네바 메바 랑신 메바 있나 아니 저 규진 좀는 저 다음에 제 쪽으로 와 타직도 디랑래 타직도 디랑 말해서는 되네 셰트베케 메바래서 어디네로 송난 거래.
And actually, the same principle, the same logic pertains to the other two alternatives, where several causes produce a single result, or several causes produce several results. Again, it's not the case that several causes always, produce truly existent several results, because several causes, such as the assemblance of the earth, water, heat, and so on, can produce one single result, that of one single flower. We observe that, so there's no absolutely certainty that several causes always produce several results. But then if we ask, well, is that we can establish that several causes always produce single result, like that one flower, that's also wouldn't hold, right? There's no also certainty to that, because, well, we can see there are several causes producing several results, like same causes of the earth, the seeds, heat, water, fertilizer, produce many various, like a flower, well, they could produce the branches, the leaves, right? If we take apart the flower, it's not a single really result, it's also a compounded multiple result. So nothing really of those four possible ways work if we hold them to be truly existent causes producing truly existent results. And does it mean nothing appears whatsoever? Well, again, according to Nagarjuna, that's not right the case, because actually the opposite, right? Everything can arise unceasingly because of emptiness. Everything can appear and arise, and because it's not truly existent, right? Exactly because of that. But if we just try to grasp and say this is like this, or no, this is like that, it's not the several, it's singular, then, well, it's not going to work. It's not gonna be tenable if we grasp to the truly existent production in these four alternative ways.
네 다데젤라 네 레고솜바데 ngola choba chigdirol gireba segere 네 다 거르데니 나오 초 탐제 아니 가라서 그래 란신지 대마로바 요마레 아니 란신지 동반이래 segere 김전디 직중오양 로바면도라 되명오양 로바면도 어디내 적송난 거요와 다디 가라서 그래 가서 강사지 딱 다음에 때라 밥단제다 주지 다음에 때라 밥단 조니네 시에서나 대 스탑되어 용사래 네 강사지 다음에 원에 섬로다나 좀된된 정도 나라 네 강사 세건데 힘다 나신래 송샤유래 힘다스디 이거 콜로당 방로다 예라 망보라 되네 따바나신 강사데 풍보라 되네 따바잠제래 어디네 송나유래 디아니 제바자단데 갈슈기
Now we arrive at the fourth logical argument of the middle way, investigation of the essential identity, the reasoning of neither one nor many. And here, what happens is that the middle way proponents established emptiness, resolved that all phenomena are empty, devoid of self, by saying that they neither singular nor multiple, neither one nor many. And here it's actually more convenient to separate the ascertainment of selflessness of a person, an individual like us, right, and ascertainment of selflessness of all phenomena. So we start with this first one, the logic that establishes selflessness of individual person, where the Buddha, to explain that, equated a person with a chariot, right? Like a vehicle, a chariot. What is a chariot? What is a vehicle? It's a label that is imputed on the basis of its many fragments, the wheels, the cart, right, and so on and so forth. So same goes for a person, an individual. It's a label imputed on the basis of its many parts, known as the skandha, so aggregates, and that's what we are going to look at right now, this type of reasoning.
onda gansa dangme de tenla pabyon de kunda je chaje dang lenje je chaje ni yong do wa ta kunda je chaje ngoma ngazo takje rawan jen je ta second de ngazo ka gyula joba doje same tenze ka zu hyu sa ware ta rang gi de do wa ani lenje je takjen de dang arang zo namjin namjin so so jo gansa changma ji pongbo nga la nga da nga yi sna jin de ro wa 어디도 진제지 진지 로데 율데 안다단 도다 메도 ane 다제다야래 땅 거두 나주 니 송사 율데 풍바로와 니 봉봉가 디당 다 세근데 지그래도다 타데레샤 양나 가르서로 봉봉가 데라 nga duge nga den du temedo ane 도나라 레버조 디숨송샤그래 anda pongbo dang ngani gaza chigba yina pongbo nga rela ya nangsa chesona mando shudurwa peno sujila samno dana ani gyuzo shi reso juji dang test up de roshana ngazongo kangba lagba atindu subu nangla jungwa shi den zo mangbo zomde yore te ma chegar jana so mangbo shuyo bare dana ja nga mangbo shuyong gre sorwala yang dewa dungal tanyum en lusor semsor tende jasono mangbo shu chang ro yore ti mangbo yoba na ja ngaya mangbo chang ro yore ani dushe la yang da na shin do samjung ye cha mangbo yore temen du ye cha mangbo yore and da ka san duje la ani dushe de ne samar zambara wa chembor zamba chungur zamba dewar zamba tungol zamba la zo ba dushe yang de na mangbo le ge yo za nga mangbo shu ji cha ro za wa 네 남제 다가나진도 초제당 초조다 남제 공회시 발라서 뭐 뭐시 연구를 디나신 제바제 연구가 뭐 쇼지 여바지 찬도를 디네 있나 나주 나 진당 대당 네 다다 차기요 말에 나주 단다버다 나 세근데 찍보르 송거여라 마도 마 망보직 수직 송거여 말에 네 율지 내당 대당 나의 송단이 보데 잔데 되게 매두 나 찍지 거야 마도 봉보당하니 지금 뭐대야 마도 버려 아니 따오나 봉보랑아 타대 버지여라나 대양 아주 전당대다야 따다 통면도 와 아주 봉봉가 다가랑 랑아 송그래 마도 뭐 봉봉가 많이 명아 샴바지 가월로 네네도 그래 아주 전당게 로데다양 갈와다다 차대 그래 된대지니 양 저기요 말해 지금 타드니 레로즈 줄번에 샴바산에 네고 코라 말와 다 가슴 지가 말아 다들 말아 댕게래 람나 이 다들 바랑 차도 요래 ngala lagba yo ngala kangba yo bal yo la bana yin ane phongbol nga yo bam ngala phongbo yo gari temba yin ya ane chiba ji yang re tende thade ba rang chang du gu wa ane tende ji cheba che so na ne ta me ten la phap dang sa na me do ta mi nye be na ba di do na la song ja ba re.
So this reasoning of the chariot was explained by the Buddha in a sutra, where what happens is that when we grasp to self, we have the two ways we apprehend the self. One is the innate way, we all believe in the self, in the I, and another one is more like a learned, acquired one, for studying some philosophies. And that one we have already dealt with when we discussed the first reasoning that investigates the cause, right? The learned ways of imputing the self, truly existent self. Now we are more concerned with the innate, more intuitive sense that we all ascertain a self, ascribe a true reality to it. Well, what happens is that when we think where is the self, right, we all think it's somewhere here in terms of our aggregates, physical, mental, right, constituents such as our form, our feelings, our perceptions, our consciousness, right? We think that's where the self is. But then we can ask a question, a few questions, right? Is that the self is the same as its parts, aggregates in this way? Is the self is different other than the parts? Does the self possess its parts, or does the parts possess the self? Right? That's what the Buddha have explained in the sutra. These are the questions we all need to ask ourselves. So this intuitive sense, this innate grasping self, it happens that we impute this self, me, on the basis of the aggregates, right? And now we're gonna ask, well, are they the same? The self and the aggregates, are they the same? Well, what are the aggregates, the skandhas? Well, for example, the form. Actually, each and every of the 5 aggregates can be further divided into multiple subdivisions, so making them extremely like multiple in. So there's not like a one singular aggregate, right? The form itself can be further divided into 4 causal forms, 11 resultant forms, to make it more easy to understand. Basically, the form is what? It's our head is the form, arms, like torso, legs. Already, it's not one thing, right? There are multiple parts. And if we say the self is the same as the form, well, is the self is same as the head or the eyes or the hands or the legs, right? There are multiple body forms. And if we think the self is the same as the body, then what happens, the consequence is that there will be multiple selves, but that's not the case. We think there's only one me, right? And right, same with the sensations, the feelings, the aggregate of feelings. Again, it's not just one kind of aggregate. Sensations could be physical, could be mental, could be happy feelings, sad feelings, neutral one. Which one of those is self? When it's a happy feeling, it's a self, or is a sad one, right? Again, there will be multiple selves that take place. Same for the formations. There are also divisions there in the non-concurrent formations and so on, so forth. With perception, which is basically our capacity of the mind to grasp at characteristics of phenomena. That's what Buddhist perception is. Like when we grasp to small or big, we see it as red or blue. Which of that perception is the self? Right? Again, will be multiple selves. And of course, for the mind is also not singular. There are 6 consciousnesses or 8 consciousnesses according to different Buddhist schools, 5 sense consciousnesses, right? The visual, the auditory, and so on. So you see, it can't be the case that the self is the same as its parts, the aggregates on the basis of which we impute the self. Well, is then self is other than the aggregates, but where we were not believe, it's not like any of us believe there is a self somewhere outside of this body, of this mind, right? The self is out there. That's not how we perceive it. And besides being same or different, there's no third option there, right? It's either or, and neither of those two really hold, or neither of them are logical. So same, actually, the Buddha said for the possessor and the possessed, right? How is that? Is self that possesses its parts? Like I have the head, I have the hand, right? Or is it the way around? Actually, the parts, the self is in the parts rather than the self is this kind of a possessor. Neither of these two, again, we can use the same logic as was just explained. Neither of these two options, alternatives, will again be able to point out to any kind of a self. The self is just a mere designation. It's we're not going to find it by inner parts or holding the parts or possessing the parts. Or So in those, that's other ways we are examining the self. So
네, 다 디땡도 루줍디 네 땡당 땡바지베르바 니트바 나요레 ngala ane ta ten ten ba se du chokzi yi deng du ane ta marme yoba na je chokzi de ten je marme de den ba wa neng phongbo de ten da ta ten ba re du be yang na ta de ten je phongbo ten ba re du o den de je ne te cheba chen na yang ta ko chig dan ta de ni na ta de yin ba shir sha re do wa o de ro ji yin re do me ru ane ta ja da re 가서 된데 있나? 아니 봉보당 아니디 저와 냐갈 하고 쇼자기래. 저와도 뭐 다지기 저와다 텔레 대중기 저와 니마도 조사해 말어와. 가서 봉보당 아니 뭐 다지기 저와 있나네 땡땡 바셔서 요 말에 지인 거고래. 지인전에 나도 되지 제가 전에 메뉴 봐 차사와래. 아니 텔레 대중기 저와는 균제인 거고래. 근데 땡당 땡반이 보다 균제 저거 가라 말해. 두서치기 저 남편준 네 규당 저우진 저 텔레비전 영상 거라 매상 풍보된 다된 바서 근데 이나다 다된 풍보된 바 가리람나야 네 다다 차게 말해. 아니 데네지 제만 나와래. 양 대등도 나와다 봐이 입당 촉바서 그래 봐. 니 되반 나요래. 또 신다를 배잖아 그 제시기로 와. 신다 세근데 입삼질라 라고 여러배 살라고 이나 되는 나 세근데 입삼질 다 뒤로 차도록 와. 나 세근 입삼질랑 거진 제거이나 땅 가서 소감당 되백함 된도다 계제셔서 오즈래. 그 류지 넘버지 여러 와. 네 소면 감들라네 가르게 지시기. 그 류 넘버 여 말해. 소면 감 류지 넘버 담지 세사로 와. 조사르다 코케와 쳔마 소감다 되백함달라네 계제 가가래. 디네 소면 감다지 아니 파르돌라 유비 남셰든조 이제랑 신기 류지 유규레데 류랑 선바지 여 말해. 제선타 된솔라 아니 ngarjin me barebe konzo nga yeme ene kandeji ani yang ib de re dang go dang jong dang dan leble mangbo yobana che nga dendeji yogo rowa nga zu nga re yin jong yin leble bin do yin san den suji ge sung ge mar zendang da zaw nin kapdo jang me do wa 대한 지금 말. 너 촉바 잠저래 람나. 촉바 세근데 딱바 잠저러 와. 근데 신나 라빈두서는 신동 망보 좀발라 신나 라브레. 파바 따서는 신동 찍라 신나선 라게 요 말에. 저도 망보 좀발라 되네 딱바 연소나. 그 파바바 투윤두서는 되네. 파바바바바 제제 제소나 녀간 요 말와. 수라 삼노다나 둘젠 바도 바제 둘젠 팔 제소나 라도 그래. 시에발라 삼노다나 깨지 참 깨지 인원의 마치 깨지야 다른 파바세서는 대한 라도 그래. 제도 녀사 가면 바쳐도 그래. 초바세도서는 딱바 잠지 자고도 와. 어 된데 이제네 다저단다지 유래서.
Khenpo чивати di jelva nova jelva dan di tinjungi jelva
대중게 절와이나 교당 저우인 거래. 교당 저우인 존나 깨진감 치고 거로 교관란 저우데 첼인 거래. 아니 나당 풍분이데 깨진감 치셔서나 되네 다다 샤마서.
Thus. On top of these four reasonings found in the sutra, Nagarjuna added two more questions, right? That we ask whether the self depends on its parts, on the aggregates, or whether the parts depend on the self. So basically, we can translate it as support or depend. Like support would be like the table supports a butter lamp in front of me, or whether it's a butter lamp is supported by the table. So again, we can't really say that the self supports or the aggregates, or the aggregates support the self. And really, it's for that to happen, we need to talk about the connection. Right? between the relationship between the two. But according to the Buddhist tradition, there are only two ways there is a genuine connection, that genuine link between two phenomena that could be established. One is the connection in terms of them having the same essence, then we can say they are related, or the causal relationship. One is the cause for another, right? So interdependent or the same essence. Otherwise, we can't talk about any connection or link between two phenomena. So if we think about the self and the aggregates, whether they have a connection to depend one on each other through having the same essence, but that would entail that they are the same essence means they're the same, and we already looked at that they are not the same, right? Multiple aggregates cannot be the same as singular self, right? So here again we don't find a truly existent self. What about the second type of connection, the causal one? But the causal one means that there's a cause and then there's a result. And according to, again, to the to the Buddhist tradition, that is the cause is always comes before the result. The result is subsequent to a cause. Right? That's how it's happened. The cause has to cease for the result to arise. So they're never present at the same time. And that's not the case for our belief in the self and the aggregates. It's not like one is there and then it ceases and then the other one, like self, comes. We hold them to be there at the same time, simultaneously. Simultaneous coexistence of aggregates and self means that they cannot have the interdependent connection of being a cause and result. So there's no connection between the two. So like a table and butter lamp, there's no relation between the self and the aggregates. So these two reasonings that proposed by Nagarjuna again show that we can't find a self. And then Chandrakirti further adds two more reasonings than the one that there is no self, which is the collection of the parts, and there's no self, which is the shape of its parts. Here you see it's very much connected with the chariot. They used it as an example, right? This chariot is not the collection of its parts, and the chariot is not the shape of its parts. So same will be for the self and the aggregates. So the self is not a shape, is not of the shape of the aggregates, because shape means that there is some kind of form, right? Then it can be of any shape. But you see, the self right now has a form, but in the future, like in a bardo intermediate state or being born in a form of formless realms, will preclude self to have the form. Okay, in the form realm, yes, there is appearance of the form, but in the formless realm, it's not there. There's no any form anymore. The mind does not take any form. So what kind of shape the self will have? Or in the intermediate bardo state, we say that there is a mental body, right? But it's not the same as having an actual form. They're not the same in terms of their characteristics. Now, or again, the shape. What is the shape? The shape is, well, no, it could be a round shape, a square, a triangle, and so on and so forth. Well, is that how we uphold self to be, the shape? So no, obviously not. That's just absurd. What about collection? The self is just a mere collection of, right, of all those different parts, the mind, the feelings, the form, and so on and so forth. But here we have to say, well, what is a collection, which is not just a mere designation on the basis of those various parts, right? Like a forest is a collection of trees. Where is a forest? It's just a mental label, right? To one tree, we will not call it a forest. So it's a label on the basis of many, many, many parts, but itself forest is not something as truly existent. It's just a mere designation. So is the self, mere designation, right? And if we also question, actually, the self to be, let's say, of material particles, right? Many, many material particles. Well, they all can be broken down to the infinitely small particles, and then infinitely small particles further broken down, and so on and so forth, until there's nothing anymore. And so is the mental continuity. It also could be split into, divided into infinitely small, indivisible, or kind of infinitely small, subtlemost particles that also could be further divided and further divided, and so on. So in this way, again, we can't find self in the material particles or in the mental continuity.
onda di kansa tangme che ane chöy ji tangme di nga zo nga da ngayir zimba mayin bi ane shen chöy din zo la da kongay shebam kodu ki sheba ji yul da sungwaam zimba sungzin ji cha shubha din zo la chöy ji tangzin se yore da di megi marme roji thongwa ina re nawe chanyin minyin töba ina re da din zo tsangma la ni cheba che re 대사 맞아 사 냐르통 로절람 남바시 상마라야 다자당 저그래 다디나네 나존 로아도 질러 다자당 와이나 다양 용다 나존 로 홍세디 콤바 보조 제바질라 무슨 제그러와 다 롱세근디 다제 여보 당존나 콤바 야라 보와 데레다 콤바 강바디 마살라 샤바들라 그래 강바 야라 짝바디 로아이나 가족 sala 대신be kamla kama yala kya yore la sala 대신be kamla ya kya mala shaya yore tene mare gujo je kaso gor saje chin chilo ro dilamna tane saje chilo ro sa gande kandere kangba di pha so pe ne lebra se ro ane kangba chik ne je pa po yong du saja de dan kangba de theg du da theg me do ane theg yo sona ane dul re ne kangba dan theg du da 강바지 돌대다 사이 돌대로와 아니 강롱제 태고도 아니 레레르는 용조 태고에는 강바 포사제 사대당 소자 강바니데 뭐 열면 주고로와 되네는 용식이 그런 말에 아니 태고 그런 말을 남나 아니 강바살라 렉서근 간해질라 보여래 아니 딱 봐서 말람나 되네 루르지 돈다 줘봐래 강바 공바 로 원세근데 르 도단의 샤바마도 뭐벤네술라 얘기요 말에 chokching ne samla chokching nga zon ro ong se tu san to sa to jorwa dene phalon ro phane sul ong se gre chok magic de phage na sul le byong de khoyong ne ro are shen gang sa shen ba jing ne ko ong la gro an so so yang phalon ro yong de so so ne ro are de gang sa shen beng ne ong are ta chi du dene ne ne samla da na yang lo ta ba sam cha go yore ani gang ba ya la chak ba na sala shak ba na dene ji 깨지레레레 야자야 여러와 짱용도 깨지 남지레레레 아니 저바잖아 강비 균 강바 ngama 다가랑 팔을래 버려던 거지 균래 버려 ngama 대가라면 강바데 딱바 차그래 균래고 열어남나 다 도겐데 수래 강상 나인 라그러와 알레 코균 가서도 코 팔로 도와 차게 거라요 말에 강상 딩 도겐 엄마데 팔 짠을래 비 말에 와 된데 다제 당네 로단지 용거여래 디낭신진 다 저 담절라 제바 제나 아니 저기 다음에 텔라팝나 차거여래.
That was for the ascertainment of selflessness of a person. Now, what about phenomena? Phenomena, we mean all other phenomena besides the self. So that is to say, objects of our mental grasping. So all the things that we grasp at, those will be phenomena, and then if we grasp at them to be true and real, that's exactly this kind of what we call self, right, of phenomena, like core essence of phenomena that we take to be truly existent. Could be like objects like butter lamp, could be sounds like pleasant, unpleasant. We could examine those, or even we could examine here our daily activities such as walking, sitting, laying down, eating, right? Those are phenomena. Are they truly existent? For example, walking. Nagarjuna went into great detail analyzing the so-called act of coming and going and whether that could be held to be truly existent ultimately. So if we examine what is walking, it's lifting of one's foot, bringing it down to the earth, right? So is the lifting one that's walking? well, then is the walking only, then will be when we're kind of like in space, suspended in space, right? Then we walk, but that's not the case. So is that when we, when our feet are on the ground? But when they're on the ground, do we even call it walking, right? The walking is the change from one place advancing to another. But when we advance, we could also further question, so what happens when we leave the food and bring it down on the ground? Do all the particles meet between the food and the ground? If they all meet, they kind of mingle into oneness, become indivisible, which is not the case. If they don't meet, there's no walking that takes place, right? Also, so we understand also we could further question it and see that coming and going is nothing but a mental imputation, because they are just mutually designated phenomena. If we say I'm going on, we head towards one direction, to the person who is already in that direction, we are coming. We are not going. We are coming towards them, right? It all depends on the perspective. According to the perspective of that other person, we are coming to them. But for us, we are going. So to come and go, they are mutually interdependently labeled things. And that means that actually they're nothing but that kind of mental imputation, right? If we think about each moment in terms of time when we go somewhere, each moment time changes, right? And so there's a continuity that each moment leads to next one and next one. So there's a change. But we think there's a self which is truly existent that went from one place to another. But if there is a continuity, what kind of self? The one that left let's say the point A can never reach the point B, because there's each moment the mental state seizes, the next one arises in terms of time, right? The mental continuity works like that. So this, again, no one can ever be going, because who is the one? Basically here we examine the goer, and by seeing there's no goer, we also establish there's no act of going. So this is, for example, in very short way, how Nagarjuna examined the going and coming, and like that we could also question, and we should really question and analyze all other phenomena.
Ni de jala riba thamje ji jalbo de tendel chembo riba sung yere. Ta riba shamba kangbo tendel je riba lekha ga chisana cha yo mare. Koran nambal gyulo choba devlo choba lage re de thendu tendel je riba lek tsana thade marwa. Ina tendel korang ngo sam ji gyu gune loga shena. Ani choya tamje rangshin ruba me ani tendel rowa sa yere. Rowa ta di ngazo namgyu ngarang zo lo sung yong de yabo na doja sa gan lo sung re. Nawa da mombasa na sung re. Korwa da nyangde sa gre. Chenpo no jung. Ta di sangma chikla tuni chi sha gyo rowa. Yabo sa gan de rangshin tempa ruba yo na kola tubi doja ji yu gyo rowa. Doja de rangshin tempa ruba yo na kola tubi yabo sa na sha gyo yu re. Ta yabo korang redu re mi da samlo dana penna da marme de la cha shan ri rowa. Marme de yabo yin bi ondo dana 미 통제 강보지 거 야부 송거래. 강서 가시 말매데 야부 송거래. 가시 도자 송 가시지 야도 가양 송거 말해. 뭐랑신지 거 야부 좀 마소와. 뭐랑신지 도자양 좀도 말해. 가서 뭐랑신지 도자연의 상매 말매들로 도자 통거래. 가시지 야부 통거래. 양 가시 바르마 통거도 와. 근데 타지도 바르마를 가르치나 내한테는 요 말해. 딱고 루이 송남 민도 이거 조라람래 되고 요래. 네 코로나 냥대서 그냥 지금 지냐로 와. 루이 송나 민도로 되봐. 근데 다가 나신 동안서 규단도 양다가 나신데 아니 미지라 섬로다는 거 아마레다 범메레다 가르레 라버잖아. 거의 코로나 보고라 때나 거 아마로 와. 거의 아마라 때는 거 범으로 와. 타지도 거 아마레 랍투비야요 말해. 타지도 아마 있는 깨봐서 주고 아마 인고고 요래. 디 창마소와 갈레 모랑로 부구지 계산 신의 마아마자래. 근데 돼서 도지나 모랑게 아말라 때는 보물에 모랑게 부고라 때는 아마래. 돼서 도전에 샤바자마도 모랑 건 아마 임바양 줍두고 말라 타지도 보면 임바양 줍두고 말해. 와 딘소 딘데 진짜 최담제 네 랑시 마두 봐서 그러와. chue namje tena ta ba samje lui zindang mindo jugone shabar ma do korang ngon rangone chena sangan khayang dube mare o dende la ne reba thamje je jalbo tende shumbo segres.
And the fifth investigation is really the king of all reasonings, which is the analysis of all the logical argument of great interdependence, which is not different actually in its essence from the other four reasonings, but still it's the king of reasonings, right? The great interdependence, which basically it includes all other types of ultimate logic, such as the diamond splinter and so on, right? Because they all are concerned with this seemingly real but unexamined appearances of dependent origination. So saying that all phenomena are not truly existent when analyzed, but are seen to be just interdependently designated, right? Labeled, such as good and bad, light and dark, small and big, samsara and nirvana. If we establish all those phenomena only by we establish each of this pair by in reliance to the other part of the pair, so they are interdependently established, but that means that they actually are not truly established, right? Because what is small, what is big, right? All of this what is good or bad, for example, beautiful or ugly. Well, let's take a butter lamp. Is it by its essence, right, hold some kind of true and real beauty? Like by nature, it is beautiful. If that were the case, then everyone who beholds this butter lamp will be just smitten by it and say, oh my God, this is the most beautiful butter lamp ever. But I'm sure we can find people who will find it, actually, it's quite an ugly butter lamp. Or completely, indifferent, like the, irrelevant butter lamp. They don't care about it, right? If butter lamp by its nature were to be good or bad, beautiful or ugly, then everyone should see it that way because, well, the nature is nature, right? But that's not the case. It's all just a matter of perspective. So, it changes according to many factors. The one who sees what day one sees this butter lamp and so on and so forth. Same really for samsara, nirvana, right? Or any kind of phenomena. For example, we ourselves, we are, let's say me, like I am a daughter, right? But I'm also a mother, I'm a wife. So, but who am I? In relation to my child, I am a mother. But for my mother, I am her child. Am I a child or am I a parent, right? So if I were to be a parent by my nature, then at the moment when I was born, then I already were to be a parent, right? But I wasn't, I was a child. So you see, by nature means I would have been already born into my status of a mother or a spouse and so on. But it really just depends from the perspective of whom I'm talking, right? Again, I could be a mother, I could be a daughter, I could be a spouse, I could be all of that. So, because all phenomena are established, but not established, this word. They just labeled, exactly. Let's not use the word established here. They just merely labeled, such according, to a moment. So this is what we mean by this mutually designated phenomena. They are interdependently reasoned and labeled as this or that, which proves that they don't have any true essence, any core in and of themselves. From their own side, they lack that essential identity. It cannot be established whatsoever. So this is the king of reasonings. This is the logic of the great interdependence.
라서 다 대연정 아주 우미된서 전부 희암nga 다 시시가 바데 무제견고 제르바데 까발라 셰그레 까발 셰가 말아 고균 난데우 균데니 니레 로가벳 마인상 는 거랑 까부깝수 무제견고 제르바데 셰가 말아 yang kap kap su lurub dang lurub shun kashen nala sung yore la pakpa la yi uma sheja ba nala mushe jengu jiri bada yang loga yang sung nang yore chezang kapa la yang sung nang gire wata di shi dang nga kari lamna yang chabar ka mindu kandar ta di nzu di nang nga zo rinpoche ji ka nang shin che ne gyula chupa doje sami tenzi kordi te tsa mang za che shenpa dunzu tuiba tuiba che ne xue tabche dang yin kori nangan so ji yang rinpoche ka nang shin che ne ngoro yabu nang pa re ke gyuru wa yang rinpoche ka nang shin che ne ke gyu yabu nang pa re ke gyu nang pa tsang me nge yang rinpoche ka nang shin che ne xue tabche dang pa re che nang be yang rinpoche ka nang shin che ne sen tabche nang pa re che zang tsang ma la doji che nga zo tsang me la me ka dhru pa re she rang ka wu chung.
So these were the teachings on the 4 or 5 logical arguments of the middle way. Why do we say 4 or 5? Because the reasoning of the 4 alternatives, refuting the production from the 4 extremes, 4 alternatives, sometimes this is not really counted as a separate logic because it basically we question the cause and the result, right? They're arising from single or multiple, so on. But we have already questioned the cause and result in the first 2 reasonings, so sometimes it's kind of pertains to part of the first 2 rather than being its own separate logical argument. But sometimes Nagarjuna and a few treatises did explain it as a 5th separate argument, and so did Aryadeva in his 400 verses on the middle way treatise. He actually explained this as a separate, its own reasoning. So therefore, sometimes you will hear 4 great logical arguments, sometimes you will hear 5. That's all right. So what happened? I'm very happy that we have all gathered here because Rinpoche requested me to explain, especially spend more time on the first reasoning, examining the causes, the production, the diamond splinters argument. So I spent a little bit more time on that, and the remaining ones I tried to explain briefly, according to Rinpoche's wish. So tried my best. Also, organizers did a great job. Rinpoche requested, and they right away set it all together. All the translators into all the languages also tried their best. And you, of course, the audience, you listened well. So therefore, I'm really grateful. Thank to all of you. And again, I'm really happy that we could make, the Rinpoche's wish, we could make it happen.
Laso sonam de namje zemani tone nyebe dana bamje jenga naje bala robai sebe zole rowa rowarajo laso samal tojiche kuzu tojanang.
Thank you, everyone. Be well. So, Khenpo Tsondru Sangpo.